one of the biggest lessons for me is that you can't really fall in love too deeply with what you're doing. There's always a next best thing around the corner, and I think that's the curse and the boon.
Welcome to Tech Teams Today. I'm your host, Lucas Mendez, co-founder and CEO of Revello. On this show, we sit down with engineering product leaders who are building the future of software teams. If you haven't already, subscribe to Tech Teams Today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts for weekly episodes with the engineering leaders that are shaping the future of software development. Today is a special episode. It's the first time I'm joined by our new co-host, Matt McClintock, who actually has been producing the show behind the scenes for so much time. And he's now stepping into the hosting seat full time. Matt's been in the trenches. He started out as an engineer and founder before building a career in product management and eventually building out the marketing org at ProcessMaker before joining us at Revello. He knows how tech teams operate from the inside, and I'm excited for where he'll take the show next.
Thanks, Lucas. Excited to be here. And this is the perfect transition episode as I worked with Jose for many years at ProcessMaker.
All right. So today we're joined by Jose Maldonado, VP of Product at ProcessMaker. Jose started out as an engineer and a founder, and over the years, he's become a standout tech leader. He scaled product organizations globally and now leads AI strategy for one of the most powerful automation platforms out there. He's also seen firsthand how the AI boom and recent market turbulence are reshaping how we lead and build. Let's get into it. Jose, welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
To kick things off, can you take us back to the beginning of your journey in tech? How did it all start?
Oh my, how much time do we have? Um, well, yeah, happy to. It's a long story, so I'll just take like 4 hours and stop me when we've spent all our tape for the recording. But the short of it is, I've been in tech and software for over 20 years. And at the beginning, at least, it was a bit of a love-hate relationship. I really didn't know if this is going to be a career for me, if this is what I wanted for life. So I guess my first point of inflection where it all started for me, I was wrapping up computer science in college, and I had to do a capstone project. And I was always kind of debating myself whether I wanted to do that or pursue a career in music, with which my dad was, uh, you know, fervently against. But I was young and contemplating that. But I had the opportunity when developing this capstone project to work with a friend of mine. He was the music teacher at an elementary school. And we collaborated on this project where, for my project, I built a video game for fourth graders to work on their musical skills. So things like, pitch recognition, understanding polyphony, rhythms, and whatnot. Kind of unaware for them, they were just playing and having a blast. And it's as fun as it sounds, building video games for 10-year-olds. And I immediately fell in love with the process of creating products and seeing the joy that it stems off of kids. Now, unfortunately, I haven't made a career out of video games for 10-year-olds, but I do find that there are a lot of common themes in just creating things that people love to use, and whether it's for enjoyment and learning or productivity or making your work life better, it became a calling of just participating in that and see it unfold.
All right. And during your trajectory, you've worn a lot of hats: founder, engineer, tech leader. What's the common thread there? What's shaped how you build and lead today?
Yeah, so I think ties a little bit into that same story, which is I've always been curious as a learner and understanding how these things have an influence. And so I've been lucky to stumble into different opportunities that have then made me be kind of shuffling these hats along. The common thread has always been, can we drive something as ambitious as improved prosperity through software? Can this make lives better? Can we drive meaningful change? And it's manifested differently and in different ways, but I think that's a very important common theme in everything I've been trying to do.
And specifically for Process Maker, you joined the company in 2017,
That's
and
right.
since then you've played a big role in its transformation. Any key lessons that stuck with you during that evolution?
Oh, for sure. It's as you mentioned, it's been a wild ride, and I'm very happy to be part of that story. Process Maker is very proud to be. I think it's 25 years in the market. So Process Maker story in of itself is a story of reinvention, of changing with the times, of finding new ways to remain relevant. And I think for that, one of the biggest lessons for me, or I think great takeaways, is that you can't really fall in love too deeply with what you're doing. There's always a next best thing around the corner. And in Process Maker, we had a little bit of about that. It's in 25 years, we've put out great products that after a while become a core part of our identity. And I think that's the curse and the boon, if you will, because they do define what you're doing, but at the same time, if you get too attached to them, like something else is going to come along that's going to, eat it up. And so I think that while you are correct in being proud and putting your heart into what you're doing, you also need to be the one who's putting out the thing that's going to replace your own offering.
Yeah, and as part of that transformation, obviously, Process Maker, or not obviously for everyone in the audience, raised capital in 2021, and then that was followed by two pretty significant acquisitions. DocuLayer, I think, was 2022, sort of right before ChatGPT came out.
That's right.
More recently was the Workfellow integration or acquisition and integration. So I guess I would ask, sort of, for our audience of engineering and product leaders, going through two pretty significant acquisitions of products that you then have to integrate into the platform, sort of what were some of your key takeaways and lessons learned during that process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's been a journey. So Process Maker, is in the heart of the automation industry, or kind of macro industry, because it overlaps. And Gartner will come up with a new idea every 6 months of how they want to refer to this. But it's a very changing space. And so in that effort, Process Maker has always been in the pursuit of, like, what is the right tech mix to support a growing strategy. And so it made sense for us to invest in better, just smart doc management and intelligent doc processing products, because documents are a core piece of workflow. So we're finding them in every one of our use cases. And then Workfellow had a wonderful process intelligence and task mining product that also complements very neatly the effort of process automation, because that's what allows you to understand, to discover how processes are actually performing, so that you're kind of solving. So I think a key takeaway here is just the fit and the relevance of how there are synergies between these technologies, how the sum of these parts would outperform anything that we're doing on our own, how they're aligned, and then we have very dedicated, build versus buy discussions, but they're all meaningful because we know that we all share a common place where we want to get to. That said, I think the biggest lessons here, the biggest takeaways, have more to do with the people than with the tech. DocuLayer is a company from the Netherlands, and Workfellow is a company from Finland. Process Maker is it's a melting pot of folks from Latin America and Bolivia and Las Vegas, and so just as challenging and rewarding that it is bringing all this tech together, it's really bringing all these folks together and getting everyone rowing on the same boat towards the same direction. There's a lot to learn there, but a lot to be grateful for as well.
Awesome.
You've said that automation used to be about efficiency, but now it's about intelligence. And I really like that, especially in light of everything that's happening with Gen AI. But what does it look like in the real world to shift from efficiency to intelligence?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, and I like it because it's occupying a lot of my bandwidth attention these last few days. So this relates to, as you go through the thought process of all this buzz that's been created in the last few months around AI agents and agentic AI, and what does that mean, and how do you cut through the hype, and what does that mean in practice? What does that mean applied? And it's something that's very core to what Process Maker has been doing for 20 years, because as I see, AI agents or AI applied, it's another step in this, broader tech development around automation, right? Around getting systems to do work on your behalf. And I think the key point of inflection between just regular efficiency, which is all about, doing similar things or more of the same, but doing that, maybe faster or with a better use of resources, to true intelligence, I mean, in a technical way, is is all about what agency really means in an applied systemic context, which is all about how do these software systems display a sense of autonomy? How do they take action, not just recommend you stuff or distill or summarize or whatnot, but actually execute and decide to execute independently. And in doing so, then, we're in ProcessMaker, we're very fluent with a vocabulary of automation, of the different building blocks that comprise an automation solution. So for instance, how do automation workflows get started? So there's a whole concept in theory about start events and reacting to signals or response to different type of systemic events. Then there's the concepts of tasks or things that need to happen either by humans or by systems or by integrations. There are these concept of gateways, which if you imagine kind of a visual process map, these are the routing flows of, do we take the left door or the right door and why and what kind of data is analyzed. And so if we look at that vocabulary to then describe this new world of AI agents, we identify that what we're really facing is this new wave of agentic opportunities, which is how can you take these existing workflows and identify moments where the system can be more independent and autonomous. And these building blocks are what really drive the possibility to automate intelligence in a practical way, meaning outside of the philosophy of it, but they're legitimately smart because then you can take a back seat to, a lot of these decisions and routings and flows, focus on other things where you still need to focus your attention on, but these things keep chugging along. And automation and workflow kind of provide the regular guardrails and all the framework for compliance and security that you need anyway. So it becomes like a wonderful kind of next step evolution of that. But I think that's the key between efficiency and intelligence is how new, technical capabilities for agency allow things that even a few months ago were just hard to imagine.
So, Jose, what's your take on the balance between automation and human judgment? I know this is pretty controversial. How do you avoid going too far? We don't want Skynet to go live.
Yeah.
How do you avoid going too far, especially in really mission critical systems?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, one to ponder very pragmatically. Our research suggests, and the opinion that I personally share is aligned with this, is that real world problem will require a combination of these things. There are hardly problems that can be fully automated, or rather ran entirely by agentic components in a workflow. Surely you can kind of pick and choose and find the right scenario that'll meet those conditions, just as you could go to the other extreme and find problems that are entirely human and manual dependent. But the reality is most real world complex processes will require a combination of these two things. And that's not that I don't think that's going to change radically anytime soon. Surely, notwithstanding a futuristic sci-fi vision where AI overlords are doing the actual kind of validation, and sure anything is possible, but in practice you need to enforce some sort of deterministic reasoning, right? That, by the way, is orders of magnitude cheaper to execute without AI. So just by cost alone, even if anything can be kind of, undeterministically decided by an LLM, you're paying cents on the dollar if you just run it through a decision table. Like there is a place and there will always be a place for if then else. That's not going anywhere anytime soon. So I think the real sweet spot is in the orchestration, like when to use the LLM, when to use the reasoning, when to use a decision table, and how do you orchestrate that, decide accordingly and track it and audit. And in that concert, there's always going to be place for all these instruments playing together. Nobody needs to run a too long a solo. It's just not happening.
So, keeping humans in the loop for the foreseeable future. Right.
Yeah, and not just the
Um,
humans, but the systems that allow humans to collect these decisions and track them and audit them and log them. The AI is just not good at that, and when it is, it's impossibly expensive. And someday soon, we're all going to come to have to collect on all the bill the checks that we've been raking up with AI costs, and nobody seems to mind about.
So you've worked on semantic AI systems in the past. Now you lead AI product strategy. How do those perspectives shape how you're approaching LLMs today?
Quite a mouthful of a question, but it's pretty interesting. I've been working with semantic systems for a while now. I got interested into how understanding language elements could be used to infer software systems. and and now with, of course, with recent tech advances, we all see how this is playing out day in and day out in our daily lives. If nothing else, I agree with some commenters and media outlets that have made this point that I think is super interesting of how suddenly we've become renewedly, I don't know if that's a word, reinvigoratedly interested in good writing quality, in the capability to express yourself properly, to articulate. These were skills that were dying 2 years ago. Who needs that, right? My phone will write everything for me. And now suddenly, the better you articulate with your right choice of words, the better that you can inform all these AI systems. So, if nothing else, I'm a fan of that. Renewed interest in the power of the pen, of penmanship. But more practically, I do think that there's an immediate relationship between how we communicate as humans, and of course, we're taking a page of that for all these systems. So just being better mindful of how language has evolved, the study of languages and how it relates to different cultures and different times is a great gateway or window into how this can play out in AI systems going forward.
Wow, that was if I had a tough question, that was a really great answer. So digging a little bit more into the product side. So what's been the biggest unlock for improving product velocity
Mm.
without sacrificing long-term vision or
Oh,
stability?
have you been reading our Jira comments, or what's that about? No, it's a great question. When I joined the product team in ProcessMaker, and kudos to the long list of product champs that had gotten the product to that point. Um, it is on their shoulders that we've done so many cool things. ProcessMaker was releasing about generously twice a year, because it was in a process of being very mindful of the quality and of the stability in the offering. And while it meant we had a very stable, decent product, it also meant that the velocity was taking a big hit because of it. And we didn't invent necessarily any radical new concept. We just started applying a bit more of the mainstream ideas that we've seen work elsewhere. Specifically, just release smaller and release more often, and being very structured about this, so that it became part of our natural fabric and our natural culture. And this is not just in our product and engineering teams. So certainly product and engineering made a complete 180, going from maybe twice a year to consistently every 3 months. And these are major releases, so consistently point minor releases every 2 weeks. This meant changing a lot of our habits of how we commit, of how we test, of how we do QA, but it also has cascading effect for the entire company, because now there's this rhythm with which you have to document, this rhythm with which you have to update company materials, update our customers, our channels, and so on. And so once everyone gets in line, suddenly you find in this rhythm, and now we're in the transition of, like, we should do this more often, and we're not putting up necessarily more and in aggregate. It's just dripped more predictably and more consistently, which cleans up so much added fat that you have to work with when you have too large the bills, that then the QA is unmanageable, and or even just producing documentation for it.
And Jose, you've led PLG
Yeah.
initiatives that eventually became major growth drivers, and I'm a fan of the approach. And what did you learn about making PLG work, especially in larger and more complex enterprise environments?
That is a great question, because PLG is a tricky game to play. On paper, it makes perfect sense. Find opportunities for your customers or your potential customers to discover your products, and then get
Investors
them.
love it.
Right. Get them, familiar with doing things on their own, and then when they're ready, they'll kind of upsell themselves. And who needs a sales org? And in practice, I mean, certainly a lot of these concepts are legitimate, but larger deals, larger enterprise customers, larger deployments require a different sales approach that you need to reconcile with PLG. And there is a place where these things can coexist, because also what you really want is to ensure that your target audience very early on self discovers the value of your product. And so that way, when you do the hand holding, when you do the consultative selling, and you're pitching of the whys, you've already kind of crossed that hump of like, does this even satisfy what we're interested in? And that's what PLG allowed us, was for target audiences to kind of cut in half the imagination required. A big challenge, not of ProcessMaker specifically, but of the industry, of the kind of the automation platform slash workflows slash box of Legos, is that it's too reliant on the imagination of the Lego builder. And so for the right audience, it's wonderful. You have great imagination. Oh, just give it to me and I can build anything. That's where the hand holding comes for a number of others who maybe just an assisted build or a pre-bundled build can really close that gap, even if it's still part of a larger enterprise sale process.
Right.
Yeah,
But
PLG works great if it works for your org. It doesn't work for everybody, right?
yeah.
Yeah, it needs to be customized for that. Yeah.
So to pivot a little bit here, going more to the sort of leadership side, over the past couple of years, obviously tech leaders have had to steer through AI disruption, layoffs, tighter budgets, remote first challenges. You've led through all of that. What have been sort of your biggest leadership learnings through all of that experience?
Oh my, now that's a big one. Yeah, I mean it's a roller coaster. We're all spending most of our lives in these projects with these folks, and they become a big part of our day-to-day and our personality. I think a lot of the key leadership takeaways for me can be thought about in the relationships that we have with our peers. I mean, in my case in particular, with my bosses, I think that's also a key part of a proper um, I think just leadership and cultural perspective is that you really trust and agree with the person, the people that you work with, and specifically that you work for. If there's vision, alignment and vision, if there's trust, if there's open lines of communication, then all of the rest can kind of work itself out. I've been very lucky. We've had wonderful leaders at Process Maker and before that as well. And so in that sense, I think this also ties into what we've been discussing, through these acquisitions, bringing folks from different worlds. We were melting together different cultural styles, different leadership styles, different communication styles. So the real magic comes from identifying all these potential players and figuring out, what's the right formation for this team and how can we make the best of this mix. So keeping your folks playing at their best in their individual positions that really contribute to the team game as these circumstances change, that I think that's more important than the right tech and the right products at the right time.
So I'm going to
Got
dig a
it.
little bit deeper into that. Um, so how do you keep morale and creativity and forward motion alive, especially in your case where you're managing teams all over the globe and sort of there's this economic turmoil and markets are
Yeah.
shaky? Sort of how do you handle that?
That is a good question. I don't, I don't know. I don't have a silver bullet to it, but it's worked for us in a following sense. I believe in the power of, um, I believe in the power of, how do I put this? Just aligned storytelling that you believe in, that it comes off as true, not just as fantasy. And I think that is extremely powerful. And so by this I mean, we've done, for example, and we have been doing very successfully bi-weekly, all hands, everyone's in the pool, all skate company presentations of what's new in product. And this has allowed us to, through good times and bad, through, expansions and recessions, through acquisitions and whatnot, to really reiterate the same messages that we want as a company and to open up for these voices to come through. And like there are a number of these meetings across the company and opportunities for everyone to chat about. I like this one in particular because it's a product meeting, but it also helps us articulate the why we're doing the cool things that we're doing. And this is an opportunity to showcase some of the successes that we have, the stories of how people react to these things. Sometimes when we're in leadership, we feel very aware of good and bad feedback. We know we follow very closely our biggest success, our biggest risks, and so it's easy um, to miss that not everyone is getting the same information with the same context. And so who knows what kind of weird messages are being passed along. And so even something as powerful as reminding our engineers some of the wonderful reviews that we've been getting. We see it all day, right? We want leadership monitors it, marketing monitors it. But what, the senior engineer in charge of feature so and so, they'll probably never see it if we don't make it part of our daily conversation. And then they become so proud that they recognize, oh my God, this thing that we have worked so much for, somebody in some country unnamed in some place that I do know nothing of is raving about how this feature just made their day that much better. So being able to articulate what the company's going through, um, and why it matters sounds obvious, but we not always have been doing a good job at that. And once we made it explicit and repetitive and recurrent, people start to show up. And I do get approached, if I may say, people to remind me and to tell me that it's one of their most favorite meetings in the company, because it's the love fest. We all share what we're doing, and we get a sense of the why that we do it, and that just makes it all more worthwhile.
So making sure that everybody knows the work they're doing has an outcome in the real world,
Yeah, the
right?
work matters, and there are outcomes and there are impact, and it sounds obvious, but we miss the opportunity to keep our teams in the loop about that.
I wanted to shift gears here a little bit and talk about um, AI. But I wanted to get really tactical, and
Okay.
I wanted to ask you, Jose, for an example of a risky um, product bet around AI that you've made recently and that actually paid off.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So I could definitely call out of a couple of examples, and I think our riskier bets around AI have been deciding what and what not to really get into and invest kind of the bulk of our engineering resources, because we consider ourselves. I'm very proud of our engineering team. It's very agile, it's very fast, but it's still you have to go through several cycles before anything that you conceive will make it into the hands of an end user. I think our latest time to rollout cycle is about at 2 months, which is amazing. Meaning the time since we put down a PRD until somebody else external gets it. But in these days, 2 months can still be a long time, and we've seen a lot of that. We have a great idea, we put it on a napkin. By the time we're releasing it, there are already 17 things that kind of compete for the same attention. So our most rewarding bets have been, how do we take these components and put them into something that's immediately useful now? So, for instance, we have a lot of AI capabilities around our core flagship AI feature is called Flow Genie, and genies are basically AI tasks that act as steps within a workflow, right? So in ProcessMaker, you'll put together a workflow, do this and then that and then that. And you can assign these tasks will be done by a person, and these are other like automated tasks. A couple of last, I think it was end of 23, or we put out genies, which are proper AI LLM based tasks. And of course, this kind of opened the world into possibilities. And then we've created a number of genies for different purposes, like, scrape websites, pull condensed information, or perform actions and whatnot. But again, these are building blocks in a Lego box that, until you find the right way to leverage them, they're a hard sell. So one of our most interesting bets have been bundling these capabilities within in our core kind of vertical solutions. So, for instance, we have very workflow heavy solutions for higher ed. One of our flagship solutions there is for transfer credit. So you have coursework in one school or in community college, you want to transition to another one. It's a vanilla process, right? Somebody needs to fill out a request and then chase someone to approve it. And what? By the way, it's one that's very sensitive to a large market because students, they're always running around chasing professors to get these equivalencies approved, and nobody really knows, and they sometimes don't even know if they are properly enrolled in classes are starting. Am I even in this? So it's a legitimate problem worth solving. Never mind that schools really, half of their population comes from transfer students. So there is like legitimately enrollment numbers and admission rates and graduation rates directly tied to these metrics. So from a business opportunity, is very sensitive. And we have our product there, and we started dripping it with these little agentic opportunities, as I call them, powered by these genies. And the schools are none the wiser. Like, we're not advertising necessarily the genies that are doing half of the magic, other than it's powered by ProcessMaker AI. And these are genies that, for instance, if a course comes along and does not have a course description, previously we'd had to like send it back to the student and whatnot. Now we'll just go to the website, do a quick scan, do a quick web scrape, produce a description that will at least inform the course professor, what this is about. And it all happens automatically in seconds. And then we'll have another genie that'll recommend, based on what's happening here, this sounds like we could match it to this course of ours or these series of courses. So the process of you having to put together all this on your own, even with it's already an automated process, but now half of these steps are just recommended for you. And that paid off beautifully because, on the one hand, this target audience that is already very sensitive to these improvements and to this process immediately recognizes how this is just becoming that much more efficient. But it also gave us a channel to test and harness and the improvements around our genies and our genie capabilities. And so it gives us kind of a way to test what we're building in an immediately applicable use case. So I love to find those opportunities, and just instead of just sitting back, and hopefully somebody will pick up on the amazingness that you could do with this if you just take the time to figure it out.
And just a quick follow up there, you guys made that bet quite a while ago, right? So you had to you bet on higher ed, and then you had to dig deeper and sort of find your beachhead market there, right? It
That's
wasn't
exactly
like
right. So the first
uh,
version for transfer credit came out like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I want to say. All this AI and Genie powered improvements we did last year. We actually won some awards on that, on just higher ed innovation in software. So just more opportunities to showcase that it was a pretty awesome bet.
I wanted to ask you a tricky question here, still around AI. What's a contrarian belief that you have about AI, specifically in software development or product, that you think most of your peers would push back on?
Contrarian belief that most of my peers would push back on. I don't know, because I don't know what's popular these days. But I am of the opinion that AI for AI's sake is useless. And that sounds pretty contrarian in of itself, certainly these days. Certainly against maybe more marketing prone folks than product. Um, but yeah, I think that if you do want to make a play in AI, it has to be very intentional. I mean, it sounds obvious. Everything that I claim sounds pretty normal, but then I don't think anyone of us here would be surprised to identify so many opportunities where this is not being the case. I don't think that there isn't necessarily a big need for AI if it's not deliberately, built for that purpose. I don't think that AI is the one all solve all for most of these use cases. And if nothing else, for what I mentioned earlier, the cost makes this impossible. So right now we're
Mm.
kind of in honeymoon mode, and everybody loves it. But tomorrow, we're all going to wake up and we realize that every time that we have an AI auto approving our, leave request, it just cost us trillions in whatever dead forests and dead penguins. And was it worth it for that particular decision? I mean, you could just use the if then else. There are others decisions that surely benefit from AI, but not all of them. And we shouldn't be too trigger happy to just smack AI stickers onto everything to bring an early dollar or an early adopter. It just won't pay off if we don't do it properly.
well, it is a valid point though. Like going back to what you originally said of AI for AI's sake, it felt like every software company in 2023 and early 2023, so we're 3 months into ChatGPT, everyone was putting AI powered blah, right? AI powered fill in the blank. And then it was like, okay, well, what does that really mean in the real world? Like, what does that actually look like? And I feel like there was just a lot of pressure from the market, from investors to deploy capital in some way where you could sort of put yourself in the AI game. And then a lot of companies sort of had to reverse engineer. Okay, we said we're an AI powered platform. All right, let's figure out exactly what that means, right? And a
Yeah.
lot of companies failed, and a lot of companies, a much smaller amount of companies actually pulled it off,
And
right?
I get it, right? Of course, it's a sexy new market. It is a thing. Like don't get me wrong. It is definitely a thing. It's going to change. It is changing our lives. It'll only get better. It'll only be cooler. So of course, we're in these early days where nobody really knows. We all have a shot at it. And we've all been working on something for 20 years, only to realize that this, you know, three-person team out of nowhere came in the middle of the night and received 100 million in funding because they have a nice AI logo, and we're all like, well, we could be doing the same thing. So I get it. But to your point, it's the morning after, right? Lights are on. We're seeing the mess on the living room. It's like, okay, let's clean up. And what does this actually need to be done? Because there is a lot of that needs to be done, but it needs to be done properly and conscious of cost and engineering cost and impact. And I think we've been a bit too early to call that out.
So before we wrap up, we're going to do a little lightning round here.
Nice.
So, yes. So this one's a little personal. If you were starting over as a tech leader today,
Hmm.
right, what would you do differently?
Interesting. I don't think I do much differently of what I'm doing now. I do a lot different. That's not true. I've always do something different, but certainly what I was trying to do 20 years ago. If I started over, I'd be more mindful of the obvious lessons. They're obvious for a reason, but I also was very keen to not pay much heed to what we don't work. Speak to your customers. Start with the why. Make sure you have a problem worth solving. I was too guilty of putting out beautiful things that I was extremely proud of that never saw the light of day because they weren't solving any real problem. And problems and opportunities don't follow products. It is the other way around. And there's just as much opportunity of solving beautiful problems. So just find the right problem and something that you're legitimately interested in because it's going to require a lot of investment, a lot of hard work, blood and tears. And I'll only go through that if I'm legitimately invested in what it is that I'm doing. So I would work, if I'd start over, and really find problems that resonate with my own interests that can keep me up at night, and figure how to solve those.
That's great, by the way. For engineering or product leaders trying to integrate AI into their platforms, if they aren't already or haven't been already, what's one piece of tactical advice you'd give them right now?
Long live the InfNL. Don't dismiss it, friends. There's a world for it. Cost cents for every time ChatGPT will come up with the same answer for hundreds of dollars. That said, it's the wild west of use cases. So nobody. I mean, unless you're one of the few with burning billions to do it. If you're starting over, you're probably not training your own models from scratch. Find opportunities where the existing data and training data can help solve the problems that you're interested in. And there's a lot of applications where that last mile is missing, right? The data is there, the models are there, but nobody's connecting the dots between that and the small problems and I say small because you need to start small, start focused, pick one and solve that, and then kind of move on. And then it's real fun because there's so many tools. It's so much accessible today than whatever it was a few years ago. But I'd advise to really find the right niche that you want to satisfy and don't try to over chew, over bite, over whatever you call
All applicable.
it. Yeah,
So start small, stay focused.
yeah.
Right. So where can people follow you to learn more about what you're doing at Process Maker?
Yeah, well, LinkedIn is fine. You'll find me there. Search for Jose Maldonado, skim to like page 7. Look for this beautiful mugshot. And yeah, LinkedIn /in/ Jose Maldonado. That's me. And I share
Wow,
some
good
tidbits
job
on
getting that.
product, on process maker, automation, AI, and all the life's hard questions of where to find a good after work beer.
All right, we'll put that in the show notes.
Right. This was great. That's a wrap, guys. That's a wrap on this episode of Tech Teams Today. Huge thanks to Jose for joining us and sharing his insights on AI, product strategy, and leading teams through change. If you enjoyed the conversation, make sure to subscribe to Tech Teams Today on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. Links are in the show notes. Jose, thank you very much.
Thank you guys. It was a blast. Great job you're doing with these.
Thanks, Jose. And for everyone in the audience, we've got more conversations like this coming your way every week with engineering leaders navigating AI and the next chapter of software development. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.